Ladies and gentlemen, let me start by welcoming you once again to the 7th African Conference on One Health and Biosecurity. The conference is one of the biggest platforms in Africa to discuss issues relating to biosecurity and One Health, and to bring a transdisciplinary expert together to discuss emerging issues and emerging threats disturbing us as a continent, as a nation, and the old world at large. I'll be speaking briefly this morning because we have a whole lot of program. I'll try to make my presentation as short as possible on emerging biosecurity threats and the activities of Global Emerging Pathogens Treatment Consortium, GET, which is the organization that I represent. The world we live in seems to be bleeding. Mother Earth seems to be bleeding because human beings over years and decades, we've done negative or we've done things that are not too good. We've polluted the earth, we've committed water pollution, air pollution, land degradation. We've released greenhouse gases into the atmosphere at a level that we've never seen in recorded human history. And the world is bleeding and shouting. And as it bleeds and shouts, it's also reacting. Because, like physics says, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So the world is reacting too, and is reacting in extreme biosecurity threats like we've never seen in recorded human histories. Extreme weather events, extreme emerging infectious disease, and different extreme biosecurity threats facing us today, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. We've seen an increase in emerging infectious diseases like we've never seen before in recorded human history. Increase in Ebola, COVID, Lassa fever, and different, even HIV/AIDS. These are emerging diseases, and we are seeing increase in the frequency and intensity of these emerging infectious diseases. Take, for example, Ebola, which was first isolated in 1976. Between 1976 and the year 2020, we've had 25 recorded outbreaks of Ebola. But between 2000 and 2020 alone, we've had 19 out of the 25 recorded outbreaks. That shows clearly that the cycles and the frequency and intensity of these diseases is getting more severe. Like we know that the largest or the most virulent Ebola outbreak that we had happened between 2013 and 2016 in West Africa, and it killed about 12,000 people, infected about 28,000 people, and almost ravaged the economy of the whole region within a short period of time. The same thing with Lassa fever, the same thing with COVID that we're presently contending and is ravaging almost every country in the whole world. Within a short period of time, COVID has killed about 5 million people and infected almost 250 million people in just less than 2 years. That shows the intensity and the severity of the biosecurity threats that is facing us in our world today. What of environmental threats? Climate change, as a result of human beings releasing greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Science tells us that the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has increased from about 270 parts per billion to over 400 parts per billion within pre-industrial period to year 2020. And we are seeing the severe impact of these extreme human activities. We are seeing it in climate change. We are seeing it in global warming. We are seeing it in sea level rise. We are seeing it in drought and floods and different environmental issues like we've never seen before in modern history, affecting every country on the surface of the earth, especially sub-Saharan African countries, because we lack the capacity and the structure to cope with such level of extreme events. We are seeing it in forest fires, in flood, in site, and other environmental effects that is affecting and ravaging different countries all over the world. About the issue of terrorism. Terrorism is becoming the biggest security problem that is affecting most countries in sub-Saharan Africa now. Countries that never used to have issues with terrorism, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, are now battling with different forms and different groups of terrorists, from Mali to Burkina Faso to Nigeria to Niger, Cameroon, Chad, and different countries battling with terrorism and different terrorist groups. But the biggest challenge of terrorism is the continuous threat and the continuous possibility of a terrorist group in Nigeria or in Africa or any other country in sub-Saharan Africa using a biological agent as a weapon of war, whether through food poisoning, water poisoning, or having access to dangerous pathogens and using it as a weapon of war. Because research is increasing in sub-Saharan Africa. Now we're having biosecurity labs, we're having biobanks, we're having biorepositories, and biosecurity labs that are keeping dangerous pathogens. And one of the biggest threats that we're having now is non-state actors having access to such pathogens and using it as a weapon of war. So what are the primary drivers of disease emergencies in the world, in our world today? Research has shown that one of the most primary drivers of disease emergency is land use change. Human beings destroying the environment, deforestation, degradation, and other forms of land use change, having severe impact and increasing disease emergencies all over the world. As we destroy our forests, which is a natural habitat of pathogens, millions and thousands of pathogens that we know nothing about, as we destroy them, animals leave the forest and look for better and different habitats. And as animals continue to migrate, there's an increase in contact between animals and human beings. And as animals and human beings continue to move together, and animals come in contact with human beings, either through the water they drink, the food they eat, or personal contact, we are seeing increase in zoonotic disease like we've never seen before in modern human history. And most research has shown that 75% of emerging infectious diseases are actually zoonotic, whether Lassa fever, whether COVID, whether Ebola, or even HIV/AIDS. So as humans continue to destroy the environment, the biosphere reacts, and we are seeing the reaction in different areas of biosecurity threats. And that brings us to the issue of transdisciplinarity. It's clear that in our world today, there is no single discipline, there is no single organization, there is no single government that can address the emerging biosecurity threats that is facing us in our world today. And there is an urgent need for us to start breaking our silos. There's an urgent need for us to stop thinking monodisciplinarity in our approach to addressing emerging biosecurity threats. We have to start thinking transdisciplinary. And transdisciplinarity is the integration of various sources of knowledge to address an emerging biosecurity threat or an emerging threat facing human beings. So transdisciplinary approach is the only approach we can use to address emerging biosecurity threats that is facing us in our world today. And that brings us to the issue of cross-sectional biosecurity, integrated biosecurity, understanding the different aspects of biosecurity and what we need to do to address these different aspects of biosecurity to solve emerging threats. I've identified 6 areas here: improve public health, which is very important, especially in sub-Saharan Africa; improve military understanding, protection of the environment, stop water pollution, stop air pollution, stop greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, and we should stop destroying our forests, improve agricultural production, improve international trade and international surveillance. COVID has proven something clearly, that a small health challenge in a very small area, if not clearly taken care of within a short period of time, can become a global issue. It's a health challenge in one small village in Nigeria, if not properly addressed within a short period of time, can shut down the whole world. And that is why international surveillance and border surveillance has become very important. And improve laboratory practices. How do we practice biosecurity and biosafety activities in our labs? Taking the necessary SOPs and biosafety serious in our laboratories so that we don't encourage intentional or mistakenly release dangerous pathogens into the atmosphere. So these are cross-sectional biosecurity that we have to take serious to be able to effectively address the biosecurity threats that is facing us in our world today. And one organization that I've worked with in the last 6-7 years that have been involved in transdisciplinary biosecurity, integrated biosecurity, and cross-sectional biosecurity is Global Emerging Pathogens Treatment Consortium, GET. GET is an organization that was formed in 2014, August 2014 to be precise, at the peak of the Ebola crisis that ravaged the region of West Africa. It was clear during the crisis that West African countries lacked the capacity, the institutional structure, and the level of human capacity to cope with such level of emergencies. And instead of depending on the world to run to Africa to save us always, there was an urgent need to create an African-based organization that will work with various government and non-governmental organizations within the continent to build their capacity to cope with emerging biosecurity threats. And great minds from Africa, great minds you are seeing on the map there, they came together and formed an organization called Global Emerging Pathogens Treatment Consortium, GET. And some of these great minds, you are seeing them today, they're in this hall, and we have others that are following us virtual. So since 2014, GET has been working with different organizations, both within and outside Africa. We've been working with both government and non-governmental organizations, and with private organizations to build the capacity of African countries to cope with emerging biosecurity threats. And we have different activities and different platforms that we use to achieve these our aims and objectives. We do policy advocacy, we do logistics, we conduct research, we do capacity building, we do outreach and community engagement, and we do a lot of publication, publish books, and other materials. And we worked in different countries in Africa. We've worked in Liberia, we've worked in Guinea, we've worked in Ghana, Nigeria, Senegal, and Sierra Leone, and many other countries. And we have the GET publication series. Like we said, GET is into active publication. We have our quarterly newsletter that is produced every quarter to discuss emerging issues in the area of One Health and biosecurity. We have our GET book. GET has published a book, which was published by Springer and written by members of GET. We have our GET policy brief series, which is targeted towards policymakers for informed decision-making. And we have the GET Journal of One Health and Biosecurity. That's one of the first journals focused on biosecurity and One Health on the continent of Africa. The journal is a platform for researchers, scientists, policymakers, and other experts to publish research and contribute to research in the area of biosecurity and One Health on the continent. And we have our GET technical paper. That is the journal platform. If you want to publish on our journal, you can send your manuscript on www.getjournal.org. And that is some of our newsletter series discussing issues that has to do with genomics, COVID-19 innovations, and other newsletter series discussing issues that has to do with vaccine and COVID, and all these newsletters were published this year. We have our technical paper series, Understanding Factors That Influence COVID-19 Vaccine Acceptability, and other important technical papers that were published this year. We have our policy brief series. Like I said, it's targeted towards policymakers to give them the opportunity to have information to take the right decisions. And we have the GET book, titled Socio-Cultural Dimensions of Emerging Infectious Diseases in Africa, an Indigenous Response to Deadly Epidemics. It was published immediately after the Ebola outbreak. And this book, the writers of this book are Professor Tangwa, Professor Akinbayomi, Dr. Samuel Ujewe, and Cynthia. We have our outreach programs. We organized the annual conference on One Health and Biosecurity, which we've been organizing in the last 7 years. Like I said, it's one of the biggest platforms to discuss issues around One Health and biosecurity on the continent. And the 7th conference is where we are gathering today. We've organized it in different countries in Africa. It has been done in Sierra Leone, in Guinea, in Senegal, and in Abuja, and now we're in Lagos again. We have our webinar series, we have our summit, and we have our Get One Health School Club. The Get One Health School Club is one of the biggest platforms Get is using to take the good news and the message of One Health to the next generation. We are working with students of secondary school to teach them the concept of One Health, making the young minds understand clearly the link between human health, animal health, plant health, and our shared environment, and letting them know that a man is only as healthy as the environment he lives in and the food he eats. It's very important to teach the young ones these ones so that they can grow and understand better the environment, the changing environment we're in, and be able to adapt and adjust and contribute to solving environmental problems, not only on the continent, but in the world. And the aim of that school club is to take the school club to the end of the world, teach young minds all over the world the concept of One Health, which is where the direction the world is going. This is our second African Conference on One Health and Biosecurity. That's the 5th conference on One Health and Biosecurity, which was held in Abuja, I think 2 years ago. And the one we had last year that was held in this same venue, we are privileged to have the governor attend last year, and we're also happy to have him attend again this year. Some of our webinar series, COVID-19 webinar series, Biosecurity Virtual Summit, some of our summit on One Health, the summit on vaccine, and the summit on biosecurity. All these were organized this year. And pictures from our One Health School Club showing the schools that we've adopted, and we're passing the message of One Health to. Logistics. GET is actively involved in logistics in some West African countries, in Sierra Leone, in Nigeria, and other few West African countries. Capacity building. We've been working with countries and national and subnational governments in the last few years to build their capacity to cope with emerging biosecurity threats. GET has been involved in capacity building in Lagos State in the last 5 years, working with the Ministry of Health to build the capacity of their staff to cope with emerging infectious diseases. And the response showed clearly in the way Lagos State responded to COVID-19 and the way the whole world could learn from what Lagos State did. It was not magic. It was as a result of years and years of capacity building and training. Now, research, work with various organizations, both within and outside the country and the continent, to conduct research. Currently, we are working with WAO, West African Health Organization, to develop a comprehensive biosecurity policy for the region. This policy is what countries within the region can adopt in the area of biosecurity. And what is GET thinking about going forward? GET is thinking about establishing the GET Institute for Biosecurity and One Health. This will be the first of its kind in Sub-Saharan Africa, and it's going to be the biggest or one of the platforms for research and capacity building in the area of biosecurity and One Health on the continent. The focus of the Institute is to enable researchers, policymakers, and scientists in Africa to give them the platform and opportunity to contribute to research, especially in biosecurity and One Health on the continent, and to create a platform and opportunity for Africans to contribute to addressing African problem, African scientists contributing to solving African problem. And we are discussing with different universities within the country and outside the country to host this very important Institute for One Health and Biosecurity. GET will be launching first quarter 2022, the GET Africa Biosecurity Research Fellowship Program. This is very dear to GET because it's a platform for GET to bring in researchers from all over the continent to conduct very interesting emerging research in the area of biosecurity and One Health. We'll be bringing African experts and African scientists from different countries in Africa to our headquarters in GET to spend between 3 to 6 months to conduct very important issues of very important research and contribute to solving the problem biosecurity threats issues that we're having on the continent. Hopefully by January next year, the first call is going to go out, and we're going to bring in the first set of scientists to GET headquarters in Nigeria to start the GET Biosecurity Fellowship Program. And it's a transdisciplinary fellowship program. They'll be conducting research in very important emerging issues like terrorism, biosecurity, One Health, genomics, vaccine, and other very important areas. And they'll spend between 3 to 6 months at our headquarters in Nigeria to conduct this fellowship. So these are some of the activities that GET has been conducting within the last few years, within the last 7 years. Like I said, working with both government and non-governmental organizations, private sectors, and different organizations to build their capacity to cope with emerging biosecurity threats. Okay. So we've been working with, like I said, with different parastatals, different organizations to build capacity to cope with emerging biosecurity threats. And we look forward to expanding our scope, expanding what we're doing, especially on the continent of Africa. It is our hope that GET will be a biosecurity platform for different organizations and different countries within the continent and will be able to contribute and bring Africans together to solve African problems. We don't always have to run out of this continent to find solutions to our problem. We can all create a platform, a transdisciplinary platform, to address issues and for African scientists and African researchers to contribute to addressing the problem we're facing on the continent of Africa. GET is a moving train in the area of biosecurity and One Health, and we invite everybody that is seated here to look for ways and avenues we can collaborate, work together to support each other to address biosecurity threats on the continent. Thank you very much, Asante Sana.